morning sky over the Andes looked like glass pale, endless, untouched. The Fairchild lifted from Montevideo's runway, its engines humming low, steady, almost like a shared heartbeat.
Look,
Inside,
it's so
45
beautiful
souls
outside.
leaned close together, the young
It
rugby
really is
players passing
breathtaking.
around a worn guitar, the flight attendant drawing the curtain, so sunlight could paint their faces. Someone laughed at an old photo folded in a wallet, another whispered plans for a match they would play after returning home. Their laughter drifted away, replaced by the rhythm of wind brushing against metal. From the cockpit, the mountains stretched ahead, white, immovable, ancient. "Beautiful isn't it?" one of them said, not knowing beauty can hide a warning. A passenger pressed his forehead against the window, his breath fogging the thin frost. "Listen," he murmured, "doesn't the sky sound alive?" Up here words grew small, the world below vanished, and all that remained was the hum of the engines and the quiet waiting silence of the mountains. The plane leveled above the clouds, and for a while everything felt timeless. The cabin was filled with warmth, sunlight poured through the small oval windows, scattering gold across jackets and smiles. Someone strummed a soft rhythm on the guitar, the same tune they played after every victory. Laughter rolled down the narrow aisle like a wave, easy and familiar. The scent of coffee, the creak of the seats, the low murmur of voices, it all blended into a melody of ordinary life. They talked about their families. One boy shared how his mother still left a light on every night until he came home. Another whispered about the girl he planned to marry after the season ended. A teammate teased him, and soon the entire row erupted with laughter. The pilot's calm voice floated from the speakers, "Weather's clear ahead. We will cross the Andes soon." The passengers clapped softly, a small collective faith in the world and in the machine carrying them through the sky. Someone
Me
pointed
too.
out the
I've
window.
always
The
wanted
snow
to do
caps
this.
below looked like whipped cream, harmless, soft. Cameras clicked. They joked about landing early, about dinner, about how cold it might be up there. For a brief moment, life was simple again, 45 hearts carried by sunlight and hope. No one noticed the wind shifting outside, or the way the horizon dimmed slightly in the distance. Inside, it was still warm, still bright, still
Oh
safe.
my God,
The kind
look
of
at that
safety that
view.
feels eternal, right before the
Wow,
sky
it's so
remembers
beautiful.
what it is capable of. At first, no one noticed the change. The sunlight faded slowly like a candle running out of wax. Clouds thickened around the wings, wrapping the plane in white silence. The guitar stopped. Conversations grew softer, uncertain. From the cockpit, a faint crackle bled through the intercom radio, static sharp and restless. "Control, this is Flight 571, do you copy?" Only noise answered back. A heartbeat of silence, then a voice distorted by distance. "You have cleared the mountain, should be descending soon." The captain frowned, eyes flicking over the instruments. The altimeter numbers trembled. Outside, there was no horizon, just endless white. He glanced at his co-pilot, who tightened his grip on the yoke. "That can't be right," he muttered. "We haven't cleared anything yet." In the cabin, passengers began to sense it, not danger, but something heavier, unease. A baby started to cry. A teammate looked up, catching the faint shake in the ceiling panel. The air felt thinner, colder. Someone whispered, "Why are we still in the clouds?" The pilot's hand hovered over the radio again. "Control, confirm our position." Static. Then a burst of sound like a heartbeat on metal. He adjusted the heading, trusting numbers that no longer made sense. The hum of the engines deepened, echoing through the floor. A sound like wind through a tunnel filled the cabin. The laughter from minutes ago was gone, now replaced by glances and clenched hands. Far below, the Andes waited silent, hidden under their cloak of cloud, while above 45 hearts began to feel the first pulse of something they could not yet name. The first jolt was small, just a tremor like turbulence. A few passengers laughed, nervously clutching their armrests. But then the cabin lurched violently, throwing a tray of coffee against the ceiling. The laughter died instantly. The engines roared, not steady this time, but strained, screaming through the thin air. "Hold on," the captain shouted from the cockpit, his voice cutting through the chaos. The plane tilted sharply to the right. Through the windows, the world outside spun white, gray, white again. Someone cried out a prayer. Others reached instinctively for the hands nearest them, strangers or friends. It did not matter anymore. The altimeter spun wildly. The mountains appeared out of nowhere, rising alive too close. A voice cracked over the radio, "Unfinished, pull up." Then static. The captain pulled hard on the controls, but the plane was already falling. Metal groaned, the sound of bones under pressure. Inside, screams mixed with the mechanical roar, the sound of fear and steel and wind tearing together. Overhead bins burst open, bags flew, glass shattered. The nose of the aircraft dipped, and then impact. A sound no one can ever describe followed a violent metallic scream, the shatter of snow and fuselage collided. The front of the plane sheared away, the right wing vanished in a burst of white. For one blinding second, everything became light snow exploding into the cabin, freezing breath midair. Then silence, one long, impossible silence. When the noise returned, it was human gasps, sobs, broken voices calling names. "Where's Nando? Roberto, can you hear me?" The wind howled through the torn fuselage, carrying the scent of fuel and blood. Someone coughed, choked, then fell quiet. The survivors moved in disbelief, crawling through snow and twisted metal. The tail section was gone, so were the pilots. Someone tried the radio, but it was dead. Another man pressed his hand against the wound on his leg, shaking, whispering over and over, "We are alive, we are alive." Outside, the blizzard had already begun. The wreck sat half buried, a silver scar against the mountain skin. The Andes stretched endlessly in every direction, no roads, no sound, no sign of rescue, just wind and white. Inside, one boy tried to light a cigarette, his hands trembling too much to strike the match. Another tore a piece of seat fabric, wrapping it around a friend's arm. Someone prayed again, not for survival, but for the strength to look around and see who was missing. Time fractured. Minutes became hours, then seconds again. The storm thickened, muffling every cry, every plea. The mountains swallowed the echo as if the sky itself wanted to forget. And in that cold, broken silence, 45 dreams of family, of love, of home were scattered across the snow, waiting to see which of them would keep breathing when the sun rose again. Morning came without color. The wreckage lay half buried in snow, its torn fuselage, now their shelter, its broken windows, their only view of the world. The wind never stopped, it sang through the cracks, low and endless, like a voice that refused to leave. 27 remained. They moved slowly, wrapped in seat covers and torn clothes, faces pale and hollow. The air smelled of metal and cold blood. Someone tried to light a small fire, but the flame died in the wind. They learned to sit closer, sharing what little warmth their bodies could still give. Days blurred together. Hunger became a dull ache, then a constant presence, like another survivor sitting quietly among them. They melted snow for water, whispered names of those they had lost, and wrote letters they might never send. At night, they listened not for rescue, but for the faint hum of an engine, any sign that the world still remembered them. Each time it was only the wind. A few of them prayed, others just stared at the stars through the broken shell of the plane, wondering if the people they loved were looking at the same sky. The strong tried to smile for the weak. Nando joked about building a hotel when they got home. Roberto promised to cook a real meal once more. But behind every forced grin was the same silence, heavy, human, unspoken. They no longer feared death. What they feared was being forgotten, frozen here, names erased by snow. And as the wind howled again through the hollow fuselage, someone whispered, "If they ever find us, tell them we did not give up." The words hung there trembling in the cold, the only sound left that still felt alive.
We have to make this last.
I know.
The days stretched into weeks. The snow outside no longer looked white, it looked endless. The rumble of hunger had become part of them, a cruel heartbeat that refused to stop. At first they prayed for rescue. Then they prayed for sleep.
Do it to live.
But when even prayer could not quiet the bodies, pleading a new kind of silence filled the cabin, the silence of a choice no human should face. They gathered together, eyes hollow, lips cracked, hands trembling. Someone whispered what no one wanted to say aloud: if we don't, we will die here too. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then another voice, soft but steady: they would want us to live. Tears fell before the first act of survival began. They looked away from faces they once laughed with, spoke to, dreamed beside. In that frozen tomb, love and hunger became the same thing, the will to stay alive.
It's been so long since I've
They
tasted
whispered
real
apologies with every breath, every bite, promising they would never forget. Days later, storms broke again, and with them hope began to fade. But Nando Parado, whose mother and sister had died in the crash, looked toward the mountains and refused to surrender. If no one's coming for us, he said, then we will go for them. 2 men set out across the white world, 11 days of pain, frostbite, hallucinations, until finally they saw green. A shepherd in the distance, a voice, the world answering back. When the helicopters came, 72 days had passed. The rescuers wept when they saw what was left of the plane, and what the survivors had become, not monsters, but people who had done the unthinkable to protect life. As the sunlight broke through the clouds, it touched their faces, carving the line between guilt and grace. Later, one of them said quietly, "We ate the flesh of our friends, but it was not them. They were already gone. What we carried home was their love keeping us alive." And as the wind swept over the Andes once more, it no longer sounded cruel. It sounded like forgiveness, soft, endless, human.